World of Warcraft has seen some very dark times. Content droughts, design fiascos, scandals, systems too complex for their own good, and radio silence as community engagement hits an all-time low. And now Final Fantasy XIV and other competitors are closing in. But I don't think this has to be the end of the story for World of Warcraft. What World of Warcraft needs is simpler systems, more content, better community engagement so that the dev teams know what will get players excited to pick up World of Warcraft again. To that end, I have invented a system of my own, a simple system that gives players huge amounts of customization, that lets developers add awesome and useful abilities without fear of spellbar bloat, giving players the ability to upgrade 3 of their spells to be something new. I'm cooking up concepts for 7 of these upgrade spells for every spec. Some of them are returning favorites, some of them are brand new. Either way, Blizzard has my express permission to use every concept I post about in these videos in the comments or on the forums. And if the Blizzard developers are too pressed for time to engage with the community, then I will. I'll get the feedback on this concept, and even if they don't take a single one of my ideas, they'll know what the players want, and most importantly, why. And they can use that to make the game better, because I want this game better. I want WoW to last another decade. When I was cooking up upgrades for Restoration, I felt like I was pretty restricted in what I could and couldn't upgrade. I'd already upgraded Regrowth into Healing Touch for other specs, but I felt like I couldn't do that again for Restoration, until I realized there was a way and put that as an option in my back pocket. And it's pretty much the same story for Rejuvenation. At first I thought, I can't upgrade that, and then I realized, nope, there really is a way, and I put that concept in my back pocket. Actually, I'm a bit surprised I didn't even touch Wild Growth. I suspect veteran Restoration players will invent their own spreads of upgrades that are hands down better in every way over what I came up with. But I still think it's wise to go over what I was thinking when I made this first iteration. Hopefully this at least lays a framework for a good structure, and I can get some good feedback to put some really good meat on these bones. The first upgrade I thought of for Restoration was Lifebind. That's an upgrade for Swiftmend. It requires a heal over time to be on the target, but it doesn't consume the heal over time effect. It's got a longer recharge time and it heals for slightly less, but it has 2 charges. The second upgrade was Living Mushrooms, an upgrade for Efflorescence. It lets you plant 2 living mushrooms instead of 1. It has a slightly higher mana cost and slightly less healing. The third upgrade is Branching Blossoms. It's an upgrade for Life Bloom, and it lets you have 2 Life Blooms active at once, but there's slightly lower healing and slightly lower mana cost. The fourth upgrade was Nature's Grace, an upgrade for Nature's Swiftness. It reduces the cast time of all your spells and increases your mastery by 40% for its duration. It's got a 90-second cooldown and lasts 15 seconds. The next upgrade is Insect Swarm, an upgrade for Sunfire that deals nature damage over time. It has 0 upfront damage, but it lowers the damage that targets affected by Insect Swarm deal to targets who have your heal over time effects active on them. The sixth upgrade is Nature's Wrath, an upgrade for Wrath. It deals less damage and uses the older green lightning projectile, but it refunds its mana cost when you cast it on a target that has Moonfire, Sunfire, or Insect Swarm active on them. The last upgrade is Eye of the Storm, an upgrade for Ursol's Vortex. Winds around you blow enemies away and increase the run speed of allies who are near you. The same enemy cannot be blown away more than once every 8 seconds. The vortex lasts 10 seconds. Now for the 2 abilities that I'd thought of after the fact that are in my back pocket, at least for now. Reinvigoration is an upgrade for Rejuvenation. It can be cast on the same target multiple times and it stacks. But additional stacks do not increase the amount that the target is healed. Instead, if 1 stack of Reinvigoration is already on the target at the time you cast Reinvigoration, then 2 nearby allies will receive the Reinvigoration buff. If 2 stacks are already on your target, then 4 nearby allies will receive the Invigoration buff. And if 3 stacks are already on the target, then 8 nearby allies will receive the buff. It's got the same duration, a slightly higher mana cost, and the germination buff doubles the healing received when you're at 2 stacks of reinvigoration, but it does not triple it at 3 stacks. The second upgrade that I have in the back pocket is Healing Touch. It's an upgrade for regrowth. There is a much larger upfront heal, and it applies a small heal over time to the target. It's also got a higher mana cost. Now let's get into the thinking. I ran out of ideas fairly quickly while looking at the Restoration Druids kit of heals. Some part of me said, upgrade Rejuvenation, add some upfront healing, or add some healing at the end when it expires or gets dispelled. And each of those ideas is already right there in the existing kit as Regrowth and Life Bloom, respectively. Of course, I came up with an idea later that I put in my back pocket. I'll talk about it later. Swiftmend, however, had no talents that upgraded it, at all. Practically begging for an upgrade. I hope I picked good things to upgrade. Feedback on this would be much appreciated. I understand that, in the end, Swiftmend consumes heal over times for instant healing with the idea in mind that consuming a heal over time makes your overall healing less mana efficient. If kicking out the mana inefficiency and making the heal slightly less powerful was the wrong trade-off, then please let me know what a better trade-off would be. Like, would having a few charges and a longer cooldown have been better? Anyhow, back in the day, wild mushrooms could be used to heal or to do damage. I decided to call this upgrade for efflorescence living mushrooms instead of wild mushrooms simply because there's a noticeable difference. I'm not sure if 2 is the number we want, but I made it slightly less mana efficient so that there would be a cost to having 2 of them active. Allowing 2 life blooms reminds me of the Beacon of Faith talent for Holy Paladins. You have 2 beacons instead of 1. I'm not sure how this is going to interact with photosynthesis. Do you think it's going to be overpowered? Anyhow, Insect Swarm was a restoration spell from back in the day. It was a talent that caused the target to miss more often. I guess that's why they put it in the healing tree, even though it was a dot. I upgraded Sunfire with this because, well, both deal nature damage. I saw on Icy Veins that Wrath was a filler when you're not healing, which really makes me misdenounce. Anyhow, I figured that making that filler so that it doesn't cost mana or doesn't have to is a decent upgrade, if one you won't take very often. I started running out of ideas here, which is a problem that I tend to run into fairly often, especially after I've dreamed up 4 or 5 upgrades already. Whenever I run out of ideas, I start looking for cooldowns and rarely used abilities, thinking about what I can do with them. I remembered that once upon a time, Hurricane was centered on the Druid. We're talking classic before patch 1.8 here. I thought making something like that, except that deals with speed as well as enemy control, would be interesting. That's why I added Eye of the Storm. I figure knockback plus allies getting a movement buff would fly. Finally, I decided to take a passive from the old school talent trees that reduced the cast time in response to crits and replace Nature's Swiftness with that. The idea is to trade 1 instant cast spell for several faster casting spells. I thought about making it so that you could cast while moving. I'm not sure if that's too much or not. Again, I'd wanted to upgrade Rejuvenation, and at first couldn't think how, but then I realized that only 3 healing abilities were really being upgraded, and none of them was especially spectacular. And of these abilities, only Swiftmend was part of the spec's normal bread and butter. I'm not sure whether that's okay or not. If I get feedback saying it's not okay, then I'll pull out a different ability and slide Reinvigoration in its place. You know, this might just make Germination viable. Obviously, the point of Reinvigoration is to allow the Druid to spread plenty of Rejuvenation hots around. But I do wonder if I did the right thing in how I implemented it. Feedback would be appreciated. Heck, if feedback tells me to grab Healing Touch and place it in as one of Restoration's upgrades, I will do that too. Now that I look at the mastery again, and the fact that Healing Touch has a small heal over time after all, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. I balked at first because Healing Touch had no heal over time, and that means it wouldn't work with your mastery. But then I added a heal over time just because of Swiftmen's effect and restoration affinity talents for the other 3 specs, and then I forgot that the lack of a heal over time was the very reason that I'd kept it out of Restoration's upgrade spread in the first place. So if this is really what you want, let me know. Tell me which other upgrade to switch out, and I will make it happen in Iteration 2. I have revived a lot of older abilities in these Druid upgrades, enough so that I notice myself doing it more than I've done it with the other classes. Feedback would be very much appreciated in this. One of the points of the whole upgrade system is to give players new toys to play with, not just to bring back older stuff. If I do too much of the latter and not enough of the former, let's face it, it's a problem. Then again, some of this is a revival in name only, so maybe it's not a problem. Only feedback will tell. Now, when I started out with these upgrade concepts, I went ability by ability, not purpose by purpose, if you see what I mean. I asked myself, which abilities exist in this specs kit that I can give an upgrade to? And when I created upgrades based on which abilities I could upgrade, I often aimed for something that I thought looked or sounded cool. Almost always I wanted the upgraded ability to feel at least a little bit different from the original. Often I tried to create some kind of trade-off, making the upgrade situationally useful based on things like the number of targets affected or having a stronger effect with a longer cooldown, things like that. Rarely did I upgrade the same ability more than once for the same spec, but while I was putting together each spread of upgrades, what I didn't do, and what I probably should have done in retrospect, was to figure out what goals a player would have while they're looking at a list of upgrades, and then make sure upgrades exist in the spread that allow the player to pick upgrades that help them achieve those goals. In my next iteration, I plan to have that design goal in mind, to consider what the player wants to accomplish and how they could accomplish it with the upgrades. I strongly suspect that in this next iteration, there will be a lot more cases where I upgrade the same ability in 2 or more different ways. That will give players more options, and since that's going to be the goal with goal-oriented design, who knows? I might even have 3 different upgrades for the same ability in the end. However, I can do this much more effectively in an environment that has a great deal of feedback available, and that's where you come in. You have knowledge that comes from experience with these specs. I don't. I tried to do my research on Wowhead and Icy Veins for each spec, but inevitably there'll be things you know that I don't because you have experience that I don't have. You'll have more and better ideas than I could hope to have, and I know I need those, so please, let me know what you think of these upgrades and what better ideas you have for what to put in their places. Looking at this through the lens of how can a player use this to achieve some goals, I think it's safe to say I done goofed with the first iteration of Restoration Spread. I mean, let's say single target healing is what I want to buff. Lifebind and maybe Branching Blossoms are on the list. I guess the Nature's Grace cooldown is on the list, so maybe not so bad. On the other hand, only living mushrooms exist for buffing multi-target healing. I guess Nature's Grace could buff Wild Growth Cast, so maybe there's that, but with only one multi-target heal being buffed, I'm starting to think Reinvigoration would be a really good idea to swap in, probably in place of Nature's Wrath. You know, even if I've hit the nail on the head in terms of ability counts with this proposed second iteration, the question is still wide open. Would that actually make Restoration Druid players excited if Blizzard announced that this was what they'd get as the new player power system in the next expansion? I'm aiming for excitement here. Any feedback you can give me about how I can get from where I am now to an exciting spread of upgrades would be appreciated. And no, I'm not a Blizzard employee. You can tell because I'm asking for feedback. Blizzard employees never do that. Of course, I know Blizzard probably won't take many, or even any of these suggestions. Heck, they might even have something objectively better in store for us than the semi-borrowed power upgrade system that I've cooked up here. But knowing what gets players excited will be helpful to them even so. That is why I'm sacrificing so much of my free time and energy on Project Decade. And who knows, they might just need these ideas to get WoW going in the right direction. Heck, If this video series just gets the Blizzard developers into the habit of creating a blue post with the thinking in it that goes in depth enough for us to understand what they're doing and what their design goals are, then that would be a huge step forward. Even saying the thinking out loud is sometimes enough to get you a new perspective on what you're doing. Is it really what people want? Does it serve the purposes that it really should be serving in the end? Am I really doing something just to make a system look awesome instead of making the game overall better? What does it do for the fun factor? Am I making the mistake of prioritizing my design goals over the fun factor? Are my design goals the right design goals to have? Do my ideas match the spec's feel and flavor? Is it a net gain? Is it genuinely awesome? Things like that. Plus, we just plain need more communication from Blizzard. If Project Decade gets the development team into the habit of telling us the thinking for every change they make, then the whole project will have been worth it, even if they don't take a single suggestion. Again, if you see something you don't like bad trade-offs or something you know is counterproductive or useless, or if you've thought of an idea that's better or cooler or more useful than mine, then don't hesitate to let me know. The more details you can provide about why you don't like it and what makes one of my ideas counterproductive or useless, or about why your idea is cooler or more useful than mine, the better. One of the main goals of Project Decade is to give whoever's in charge of class design and player power systems a good idea what appeals to players and what will actually get them excited to get back to WoW again. And the more you can say about the wherefore and the why, the better. I fully intend to iterate on this project and make changes in response to feedback. I know I'm going to make mistakes. Heck, I've already seen mistakes in some of the things that I've done. But if those mistakes generate the kind of discussion that Blizzard needs to hear, so much the better. Blizzard needs to see player engagement, humility, and feedback actually making change and action so they can start doing what needs to be done to turn WoW around. It can be done and it should be done. World of Warcraft can last another decade. So keep the feedback coming, folks. There's one last thing. I began working on Project Decade videos back in July, and considering how many months it has taken, the fact that there are 36 different sets of feedback to curate and compile, and multitudes of decisions to make based on feedback received, ideas others have come up with, and how to weave everything together into a fun, functional, and exciting whole, I don't have a chance in the tramaculum of getting this done in any reasonable length of time unless I get volunteers to help me curate and compile the feedback I'm getting. If you're willing to help curate feedback, please let me know. If I get enough interest, I will set up a Discord server where we can coordinate everything. Thank you in advance for your feedback and support. Let's make World of Warcraft the best game that it can be.